Welcome to Lesson 04, the one that finally makes file systems click. Where's that file? Might just be the most asked question in any help desk queue, and the answer always comes down to three things: files, folders, and the paths that point to them. The beautiful part? One mental model, a tree of folders with files inside and addresses to find them, works everywhere. Windows, Mac, Linux, and every cloud drive you'll ever touch. By the end of this lesson, file not found will never confuse you again. So let's start with the mental model itself. A tree. At the very top sits the root. That's C:\\/ on Windows, or just a / on Mac and Linux. Below it, folders branch out, and folders can hold more folders, nested as deep as you like. At the ends of those branches are the files themselves, each with a name and an extension like report.pdf that hints at what's inside. One quick vocabulary note: folder and directory mean exactly the same thing. Windows just prefers one word, Linux the other, and while you can nest folders thousands deep, the sweet spot for sane organization is 2 to 5 levels. Now that you can picture the tree, you need a way to talk about specific spots in it, and that's what a path is. Think of it like a street address. 123 Main, St. Budapest tells a person where you live. C:\users and a /report.pdf tells the computer where a file lives. There are two flavors. An absolute path starts from the root and works from anywhere. That's your full, unambiguous address, perfect for scripts and support tickets. A relative path starts from wherever you currently are, shorter, but only meaningful if you know the starting point, like saying 3 doors down. There are also handy shortcuts. A single dot means here, 2 dots means 1 level up, and the tilde or %, user profile %, jumps you home. And here's the bonus: URLs are paths too. The web address you typed this morning is just protocol, root, folders, page, same tree, different syntax. Let's prove that promise right now. Here's the same report.pdf living in all 3 operating systems, and look at the shape. User's folder, person's name, documents, file, identical tree. The only real difference is the punctuation. Windows uses backslashes and starts at C:, while macOS and Linux use / and start at a single root slash. Mac tucks people under /users. Linux tucks them under /home. Tiny dialect difference. Learn this once and you can read a path on any machine you'll ever touch. Now, that punctuation difference is the famous one, but there are 5 gotchas worth burning into memory, because together they cause most of the file not found tickets you'll ever see. Windows uses drive letters. Mac and Linux don't. Linux is case sensitive. Report with a capital R is a completely different file from lowercase report, while Windows and Mac treat them as the same. Hidden files on Mac and Linux just start with a dot. And watch path length on old Windows systems, 260 characters, and it breaks. Memorize this table and you'll diagnose half your future tickets in seconds. So why does any of this matter? Because path fluency shows up in every single IT role, every single day. A user panics that their Word document vanished. You calmly point them to the auto recovery folder under app data, and the file's back in 30 seconds. A server's misbehaving. You navigate to jabash var log nunijnx and read the error. Install docs, config files, backup scripts. They're all just paths. The junior who can't read them spends 2 hours on what a senior does in 10 minutes. That's the difference this skill makes. So let's put that to the test. 6 real paths from real systems. Read each one and tell yourself what OS it's from and what's sitting at the end. Anna's budget spreadsheet on her Windows desktop, John's Mac installer waiting in downloads, a Linux auth log a sysadmin checks after a break-in attempt, Adobe Reader living in program files, an SSH private key in your home folder, and finally, a Google Sheets URL, because notice it's the same tree walk: domain, folder, resource, action. Once you see that pattern everywhere, paths stop being code and start reading like sentences. And to read those sentences fluently, you need the vocabulary. Here are the 12 words that come up in every "Where's the file?" conversation on the job. Root is the top of the tree. Folder and directory mean the same thing. Linux folks just prefer directory. A path is the address. Absolute starts from root. Relative starts from wherever you are. Parent is one level up. Home is your user folder. Extension is whatever follows the last dot. Hidden files start with a dot. URLs point to the web, and UNC paths point to network shares on Windows. Lock these in, and every troubleshooting ticket suddenly speaks your language. Now, with that vocabulary in hand, let's clear up the 5 myths that send beginners down rabbit holes. Slashes aren't always interchangeable. Scripts care even if Windows Explorer doesn't. The Linux is case sensitive, so report.pdf and report.pdf are two completely different files. Drive letters are a Windows-only thing. Mac and Linux have one root, and everything else hangs off it. Spaces in folder names will bite you in scripts, so quote them or avoid them. And the tilde shortcut for home? Same idea everywhere, but the actual path underneath changes by OS. Knowing what's wrong is half the battle. And that's Lesson 04 in the bag. You've got the tree model. You understand paths as addresses. You know slashes and case sensitivity actually matter. And that mental map travels with you across Windows, Mac, Linux, and the cloud. Next up, we crack open what actually happens between pressing the power button and seeing your login screen. The 5-step boot sequence that turns a dead box into a working computer. See you in Lesson 05.